Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to my personal growth. I have never done a hyped books of the new year type video in the several years I've had my channel, and I am so excited that I'm actually kind of on top of my reading that I can do this. If you've been around my channel for a hot minute, you may have heard me talk about how when I was growing up, I didn't really have a lot of rhyme or reason to the books I picked to read because, one, I didn't have a lot of access to the internet. Yes, we had a home desktop, but I did not have my own personal computer. I did not have a smartphone, and I had to share that desktop with 5 other people. So as a result, I didn't have a lot of research opportunities, nor did our family have a lot of money to buy books new. And we kind of forget a lot of times in the BookTube community how much of a luxury it is to be able to spend a large amount of money on books. So I kind of just accepted whatever books I could find in the rinky-dink libraries I went to, or secondhand from church sales or thrift stores. So the idea of really sitting down and thinking and mapping things out and keeping up with authors was never a thing I thought to do for the longest time. And even as I got older and got my own income and I could start buying books, it's a lot for me to remember that, like, oh, I should probably check if that author I like has something new, or, oh, I should probably check when the next book in this series is coming out, because that's not something I ever did as a regular habit. But I have recently uncovered one of my new favorite genres that has really kind of bursted onto the scene in the last couple of years, and that is monster romance. Now, if you're on TikTok or around the BookTube scene recently, monster romance books, aka romances between a human and a very distinctly non-humanoid character. Yes, technically vampires could count as monster romance, but it's not in the spirit of the term. We're talking like tails and horns and wings and scales and all of that kind of stuff. And because this is such a newer genre comparatively in its explosion, it really only started picking up around maybe 2019, but mostly in 2020 with the explosion of Ice Planet Barbarians. This is definitely a genre where there's a lot of new series coming out that I have just begun, and the future installments have not been released yet, so I can actually keep up to date with series. Now, there is actually one book on this list that is not a monster romance, so I'll do that one first for anyone that's not necessarily that interested in monster romances, but the rest it's all monster romance. I hate to say that I'm in my monster romance era, but I basically am. So let's jump in. What book's coming out in 2023 am I really excited for? The first book, the only non-monster romance on this list, is probably the strangest one for me, the one farthest away from my normal wheelhouse as you can get, because it is a YA contemporary with a love triangle, which you wouldn't think I would read, but Out of Character by Jenna Miller has one giant thing going for it. Actually, 2. It's queer, and it features prominently one of my biggest interests, and that is online role-playing. If you have never online role-played, basically, you make up a character, and then you type out what that character does in a big post on a forum site. Pro boards, Guy Online, freaking, I did it on Teen Nick back in the day. But this revolves around a woman named Cass, or rather a teenage girl, who is dating one of the most popular girls in school, and it's like really freaking her out. But she is obsessed with doing role plays for this, I believe it's fictional within the universe, series of sci-fi novels. And she is basically becoming consumed by it, and also maybe developing feelings for one of her role play partners. And so it actually has a love triangle, which, not my bag. However, the 2023 Pop Sugar Reading Challenge does have a prompt for love triangles, so I'll accept it. But the number one reason that I wanted to read this was the role-playing aspect. I remember, like, when I was, especially in high school and in some of my college classes, like, whenever I had a spare thought, I was thinking about what I was going to reply as a character on the site, and looking for new role plays and I got so obsessed with it for a hot minute. I'm still kind of obsessed with it, just now it's D&D. I am the admin on a D&D roleplay server. Not quite as obsessed with it as I used to be. I have learned a little bit of healthy boundaries. But fun fact, I actually did have a roleplay partner back in the day that developed a crush on me. So I know what it is to be on the other side, and I actually had to let them down easy. So I'm really interested to see what it's like on the other side. And this is traditionally published. This is like so far away from what I usually read. But I made a joke on Twitter that like, has this author been stalking my life? And she found the tweet and was replying to it, and it was written from her point of view, so I already have a lot of common with the author. So I'm willing to bet that this book has a lot of promise to it, and I do want to kind of keep up with traditional publishing, at least a little bit. Definitely the queer books, because I want to encourage publishing to publish more of those. So I'm really excited to looking forward to this one in February. All right, and now we are on to the monster romance books. First up, we have Rook by Gillian Graves. This is the sequel to Titan, all about this group of gargoyles who are looking for this mystic, magical room of artifacts that's constantly moving. They were created to defend it, but it went missing, and now they realize that it might still exist, and they have to get into it because it basically holds all of these ancient artifacts from every group of magic users in their world. And of course, you follow as each of the different gargoyles finds their like mate. It's kind of a true mate setup, but it's more of a pull dynamic. And I really, really liked the first one, Titan. This one is also monster romance meets like a kink BDSM setup. So each book not only features a different gargoyle, it features a different kink. The first one had a daddy kink. This one, I believe, is primal. And I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of primal, but it is a friends to lovers dynamic, as it follows the human assistant to the group falling in love with the titular Rook as they tried to uncover more about this mysterious room. I really, really liked the first one. I liked the group dynamic. I love friends to lovers. It's one of my favorite tropes. And so I'm really looking forward to this one in June. Up next is Superbia by Colette Rhodes. This is the sequel to Luxuria, and this is all about, well, it's hard to say a lot because some big things happened at the end of book one, but book one had one of the best monster romance dynamics I have ever seen, because it was all about this King of the Shades, which is basically, in our world, they look kind of like the hooded Grim Reaper types, but in their realm, they look like essentially pure, like obsidian black demon looking figures. And the first book follows an arranged marriage between the king, Alaric, and one of the hunters, Ophelia. And I loved it because Alaric thought that his huntress wife would be disgusted, but it turns out that Ophelia was actually secretly kinky for monsters the entire time, and it's the best use of the miscommunication dynamic I've ever seen, where he assumed that she would hate it, but she was secretly like in love with everything the entire time. Like, Ophelia as a monster romance protagonist speaks for us all. Now this one is going to be a little bit different because it follows Alaric's captain of the guard and Ophelia's sister, and this one definitely more of a enemies to lovers dynamic because Ophelia's sister killed a lot of shades in a way that Ophelia never did. So I'm not going to have that dynamic that I love so much, but the development in the world of the shades from book one, like just the little bits of hints you get of growth, I love it. I love that in a romance series where it's not just that each of the different characters gets their romance, but also a bigger story is carried out, and I can already see like the really cool ways that the Shades world is going to develop, and I want to continue with that, even if this isn't necessarily my favorite dynamic. And also, I'm hoping in future books, I really want to see what Alaric's younger brother, like who he ends up with for a mate. So this one will be coming out in May, and I am hype. Up next is A Soul to Touch by Opal Rain. This is the third book in the Duskwalker series, and I loved book 1, A Soul to Keep. A Soul to Heal, book 2, wasn't as big a fan of, but that's probably because of some of the story elements with pregnancy and stuff. I did like that it had a fat protagonist. That was awesome, and it was handled very well. But I love these books because they're very long. I've discovered that I love longer monster romance books because it really allows for a lot more dynamics, and the mechanics of the Duskwalkers in this world are fantastic. It is a completely made up monster. I was a little bit worried when I first saw the cover for A Soul to Keep that it was supposed to be like indigenous coded. It's not. I've looked, I've checked. It's actually based on the Magus Bride like anime series, so completely separate, thankfully. But I love the mechanics of the Duskwalkers, how they have such like hunger and can go to anger really fast. So they feel like monsters. They never feel just like humans with a different face. They feel properly like monsters. Although I will say the series up until now hasn't done a great deal of reckoning with some of the mechanics of the Duskwalkers. It hasn't focused a lot on the concept of how they have to eat humans to gain humanity. I would prefer a little bit more talk about that, mostly because I love the morality aspect of stories. But this one is one of my favorite tropes, because our Duskwalker here believes he is near the end of his life, is dying, and has been pining away for this human. And so he's basically just, wants to be near her during his last days. And like, it's a romance series. Do any of us really think that he's going to die? Like, maybe not, but I love pining. I really like pining. And I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see the mechanics and the world building around Duskwalkers and the development of this series around the demons in the Vale continue. It's done really well, and I'm really excited because I know there are at least, I think, 5. Currently, I think there's supposed to be 5 books in the series, and I'm pretty sure we're going to start getting to like some big battle stuff. And book 2 also brought up a lot of the first book's characters, so I'm hoping to see more of the previous book characters continue to come back. But in general, I really like the author's work. I also love all the fan art she's been posting on her Twitter. It's great, even if not all of it is safe for work. But this book will be coming out in February. Up next is How to Marry a Marble Marquise by C.M. Nascosta. This author is probably best known for the Morning Glory Milking Farms and the Cambric Creek series, which is a series of like small town Hallmark-esque romances, but with monster protagonists. This one I'm really excited for, not just because I've read and liked the author's work before, but because this one is a monster romance set in the Regency period. And I was talking about this before. I like Regency romances in concept, and they're good palate cleansers, but because a lot of standard Regency romances are so repetitive in the tropes they use, they tend to slide right out of my head. But this one is a lot of fun because it includes monsters. So this is all about a young woman who has been trying to get a spouse for herself in this very structured society and has been failing. And as a result, now must go to this kind of monster masquerade and a last-ditch effort to get herself a spouse. But she doesn't really know how to be around monsters, so she finds a gargoyle Marquise and basically asks him to help her, teach her about how to please a future monster spouse. And wouldn't you know it, shock of all shocks, feelings start to develop between the two of them. I'm really excited for this world building. I loved the world building of the Cambric Creek series, how it draws out little small town politics and the local college. So I'm really interested to see how the author is going to draw out the basic world building of this setting. I think it could be a lot of fun, and I really, really want more people to start playing with Regency romance as a historical genre. So this one is out in February, and I need it now. Up next is An Invocation of Monsters by Kate Corvin. This is the sequel to An Inheritance of Monsters, but it's only loosely connected. This is about a young woman who gets invited to this woodsy retreat by this strange group that tells her they have information about her recently deceased mother. And of course, secrets begin to come out, and she finds herself being pulled into this strange void-like realm with monsters who are very interested in her. I liked the first book mostly for ambiance. I didn't necessarily really believe in the true love dynamic between the human and the monsters, but the dark and creepy ambiance was on point, and the monster designs and the scenes, the steamy scenes with them were just perfection. So that's what I'm looking more for here. I want more like woodsy creepiness. I want more cool monster designs, maybe a little bit more into the lore of this place and the family line, because the protagonist of this book is, I believe, a niece or a cousin, I can't remember, of the previous protagonist, and there is like a special thing about their bloodline. I won't reveal it because it would spoil the first book, but I'm expecting a little bit more build out of some of the mysteries from the first book, as well as some great smutty scenes. So all in all, April cannot come soon enough. Up next is the book that I have waited so long for, and I have to wait so much longer, and that is Sanctuary with Kings by Catherine Moon. This is the third and I think the final book in the Tempting Monsters trilogy, although authors have said this is a trilogy and then continued it longer on me before. But this is the third book in this Victorian set polycule monster romance world, and I really liked book 1, A Lady of Rooksgrove Manor, but book 2, Company of Fiends, is where I think the author really perfected her concepts, because book 1 did have an antagonist and did have kind of a group dynamic, but it definitely felt like the woman was the most important thing, and it kind of brought out the worst aspects of the quote-unquote reverse harem genre. I don't like the name reverse harem because it's directly using Orientalist tropes. And also book 2 wasn't a reverse harem because you actually saw a lot more interplay between the monsters, not just with the woman. Like, they actually liked each other and had connections with each other as opposed to just having connections with her. And I also like that this series has a lot of positive representation for sex work. The first book was a companion, I think they called her, and then the second book was all about a performer in this theater that like had sex scenes, so it was basically like ye old porn star, I guess you could say. And I really liked that they made a difference between here's positive ethical sex work, and then they also had a here's the trafficking, and made delineations between to show the difference then. But this book is probably going to be the darkest thematically, because this book, the protagonist is a survivor of human trafficking. And so I'm expecting a lot of hard-hitting ideas from that. And it's all about a woman who has escaped from the antagonist of the trilogy and can't decide if she wants to be just done with monster-like life in general in this world. It is very common for humans to just decide they don't want to know about monsters anymore and get their memories erased and go back to human life. She can't decide if she wants to do that or if she's willing to stick it out. And I'm assuming this book is going to have a lot of aspects on recovery from trauma. And generally, these books have been really long, like the Duskwalker series, which I really, really like, especially with the polycule. If you're going to introduce a polycule, you need a longer runtime because you need to define all of the little relationships that happen within the group and not just all of these monsters are obsessed with this one woman. I'm really not a fan of that dynamic. I'm really not a fan of the dynamic where it feels like one person is the most important person in the relationship. Like, I'm not a fan. That's why I'm really, really hoping that the author continues the upward trends and takes what she already improved upon in book 2 and just like perfects it in book 3. And finally hopefully we'll get to see the antagonist taken down. I don't know. Like I said before, it would not be the first time that I assumed that a book series was a trilogy and then, oh, JK! 4th book coming out. But again, I don't think I'd be too mad about that. I really like this world. I wouldn't mind other books within this world. And in general, I'm really, really hoping that maybe at least one of the monsters will be female. Book 2 did hint at male human to female monster dynamics in side characters. I'd love to see more of that moving forward. But in general, I like seeing the author playing with the idea and drawing on it and adding in more plot and more ideas and more world building. I do know that there is a novella in this series that I have not read yet. That's not considered one of the canon big books, but the characters do come in with the big fight scenes. And I'm really hoping that this book has a big fight scene, because the big scene from the end of book 2 was gigantic and I loved it. And I'm really hoping we get another big one at the end of this one. But I have to wait until June. I read the second book the day it came out, so I'm literally waiting an entire year. Not fair. And that is it. All the books on my hyped releases of 2023 list. I'm so excited that I am finally feeling on top of things going into the new year. I want to become a data girly so bad. I want to be one of those readers that is up to date with their authors and has the spreadsheets and does all of that. And I really feel like I can do it. I've already got my spreadsheet with all of these series on it and color coded. I'm feeling so proud of myself. And also, I'm just really excited. The months of February and June are going to be awesome in 2023. But if you have any books that you're really looking forward to, please let me know down in the comments. Are you a fan of Monster Romance? Do you love how Monster Romance has exploded in recent times? I hope people keep coming out with new series. It's so much fun and I am loving it. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.